Metroid has not been seen in a very long time.
Well, it's kind of hard. I mean, that was a franchise that was really tough to, I mean, they had Metroid, of course, for the original Nintendo, which I've beaten. That Super Metroid for Super Nintendo, again, another game that I went off and managed to beat. And then they tried a couple of different times for I think for the the Nintendo 64, and a couple of games since to try to to do it, but for whatever reason, they couldn't. I mean, maybe it's just me, but they couldn't seem to get to it to be as successful when they were trying to do it as a first-person shooter, as it was when they went off and had it as a third-person. I mean, maybe it's just me. I don't know. Guys, gals, listening to the show.
If you've ever played Metroid Prime, let us know your opinions, because honestly, I think we're too old to remember when it was cool.
I don't know. I think as I went through a stage, by the time got the Nintendo 64 and then the GameCube, I was getting more into wrestling games than anything else.
I would sit there playing Kirby.
That's another game. I think I had a little bit of exposure to Kirby, but not a whole lot.
If you have not played Kirby any time during your life, you are lacking a very important pink purple. Screw it. That pea color.
Pink.
Shut up. Inflatable balloon character.
Yes, a balloon full of Pepto-Bismol.
Yes,
that's what Kirby reminded me of.
Honestly, one of my favorite games. I would play hours playing that game, and I do not regret it. I aged a lot playing Kirby. I woke up one day, oh my god, I'm 18. It was like yesterday, I was 12.
It really amazes me because I remember, just how far we've come. I remember playing the Atari. I remember Coleco. Not necessarily that I ever got a chance to play it, but I had a friend who went off and picked it up. And some of the games that they had there were just terrible. I remember playing the Smurfs on Atari at a babysitter's. And it just weird games.
There's so many game systems that have been out there that some of them don't even exist anymore, like the GameCube, is pretty much obsolete.
Well, there's game stores that, like PNP Games, I have no idea how big they are outside of Winnipeg. I think I don't even know if they're necessarily. I think they're in Canada. I don't know if they're outside.
Well, they're in Winnipeg. States. That's about as far as we know.
Anyways, they go off and they sell a system that plays Nintendo and Super Nintendo games, and sell in these the 64 GameCube games. So they're out there. You can get these systems so you can play some of the classic games now.
Yeah,
which I think is really awesome because again I want to go back to, I'll go a little bit more into, this subject a little bit, but I want to backtrack a little bit. Back to the early 1990s when the the Game Boy came out. And that completely went off and changed the game.
Yes.
No pun intended.
No, and, the Game Boy was only known for two games. Pokemon and Tetris.
Oh my god, I will never claim to be one of the greatest Tetris players of all time, but I would, on one trip out to visit my relatives in southern Ontario, I went off and on hours and then would have competitions with my cousin and my uncle in the head-to-head games of Tetris. And almost every single time I would beat them. I remember playing one time by myself and getting over 200 lines and having no idea how I did it. And I was never able to do it again.
See, I set a world record of 6 straight games in a row where it freezes at the last second. I'm just about to win, and it freezes.
How do you win at Tetris? You just...
Shut up.
It just keeps going until, it gets super crazy fast.
I was playing against myself, so therefore I win. I never lose. And I am awesome.
Yeah, you're... Yeah, in your own imagination.
I have no imagination. I created my imagination.
Yes, you did. That is why... You just lost and, defeated yourself on that one.
But I also won. See, that's the best thing about arguing with yourself or playing games against yourself. You never lose.
But I mean, I wanted to go off and talk about that because we can go on and we can talk about the consoles and how things have progressed. Of course, Nintendo's got the Wii U, Xbox, which
sucks.
With Microsoft is now got, I think it's the Xbox One. PlayStation's on PlayStation 4 now.
Xbox Zero, as in zero cares.
But I mean, I think once the Game Boy kind of came out, and I know Sega had something similar that they tried to go off and do, and it kind of fell flat on its face.
Yeah,
but that kind of went off, and it really changed the game. I mean, no pun intended, because, with the Game Boy, because, eventually Pokemon, which just completely blew away almost anything out there. I remember, I had to go off, and I had to get a Game Boy, Pocket or Game Boy Color just so I could play these stupid games.
Yes, and the batteries that you needed to go through just to play these stupid games. And Pokemon is a game that I honestly never turned off. I was afraid, even if I saved, that if I turned off my Pokemon would run away and I would have to start at the beginning again. And I did not want to restart after I, finally got to an area or past the mines, which were virtually impossible to get through, I might add. Because somehow I never had a light and I kept running into walls and some stupid odd thing.
I think you could go off and get like a torch or something.
Shut up.
Game.
You know how long it took me to realize that you could get a torch in a video game? I kept running through those mines without a torch. It's like, you can't do this. Yes, I can. No, you can't. I did it anyways, and I failed. Stupid, what was it? Diglets.
Oh, yes, the Diglets.
Every time I turned around, there was a Diglett or a Zubat. I hate the Zubats. They're ugly, annoying creatures, and I never want to see them again, but I want to play Pokemon.
Actually, I think that... No, it was... you could get Pokemon that did the flash attack that went off and would clear it up.
I'm sorry, that's no longer impressive. When a Pokemon can do a flash mob, I'm impressed.
Well, considering there's almost 700 Pokemon now,
we could do a huge flash mob.
Absolutely.
I'd love to see Mewtwo dancing.
I thought it was a pretty big deal when I managed to get 150 Pokemon.
Okay, I found it amazing when I stopped getting grass Pokemon. I was very easy to please. I don't want any more Weedles, and I don't want any more Caterpies. Caterpies? I don't know, the stupid freaking... Or Kakunas.
Kakunas, yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, I had enough Kakunas to pretty much cover an entire forest.
I just remember that game, the amount of time, having to get Kakunas and all those, just so I could find a single Pikachu.
You know what? I got so tired of hunting for Pikachu that I actually became impressed with a Butterfree.
Yeah, that's kind of sad.
I was also the greatest Magikarp trainer.
A Magikarp, we're talking, it evolves into its next form. It was pretty impressive, but a Magikarp couldn't do anything. I would just put the Magikarp out for a round and then put him right back in just so he would get some experience.
Magikarp used Splash. Splash wasn't effective. Magikarp sucks. Worst possible Pokemon out there. No, that's not true. No, wait. Yes, it is.
I don't know. I just really... It was funny because once you beat the original Pokemon, Red and Blue, there was a Hall of Fame that they had where you could go off and have different, Pokemon. I actually wonder if someone tried to go off and beat the game with a Magikarp.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think they'd be slightly idiotic and slightly demented and twisted and oddly probably like me. I tried to beat the game with a Caterpie. I failed. I tried to beat it with an Abra. I failed. Basically, I failed. I have yet to beat any of the Pokemon games, and yet I love them.
As I mentioned when we did our Pokemon special a couple months ago, I was a big fan of particularly Blue and Red. Played Yellow for a little bit, but when Silver and Gold came out, I absolutely lost its interest. But it was look where your video games have now went. I mean, going from having either consoles or handheld devices, now we can play freaking games on our cell phones.
See, I remember when the only video games you could play were on your computer, and they were like 8-bit computer games, and they really sucked.
I remember playing, the only games I could play, on computer, I thought it was pretty impressive if I could play, pinball or could find Spider Solitaire on.
Yes, the moment I could start playing Solitaire on my computer was the moment I rejoiced that I was a man.
I just remember wasting too much time on Solitaire. I'd be sitting there for hours just trying to win a single game.
I remember when the first Sims came out on the computer.
Oh my god.
And it was the most talked about game. And now you look on your phone and everything Sims.
Oh yeah, The Sims, where you had to go off. I found that game to be absolutely moronic because you had to spend an entire time. Not only did you have to try to complete quests, you had to go off and try to keep your people happy just so that they would go off and be willing to do these stupid quests.
Yes, and it's like you're sitting there watching your characters get dressed. Really perverted. See,
not really, because they go off and they, censor everything out.
Censors doesn't mean you don't know what's happening.
But it's you can tell. That this game was really ahead of its time because men could have relationships with men, women could have relationships with women.
The hell type of game were you playing? I don't remember that part.
Really?
I remember my character was married to a dog.
I remember when they actually added pets to The Sims.
Yes, I had a cat, and then I burned the house down. And then the cat died. True story.
True story. I remember. Good thing you have fire alarms to go off and to do things like that.
I failed to buy the fire alarms.
You're a fool.
I let my buildings burn. Die, Sims, die! My Sims were the most unhappiest creatures out there. They revolted.
It was almost impossible to go off. If one of your characters died, it was like
the happiest day in the world. You can actually quit a simulation of life and start living an actual life.
So, but going back to this, now we have cell phones. I remember the first cell phone I had, all I could play was like Solitaire. Well, not necessarily Solitaire. There was like Pyramid Solitaire, and there was I can't even remember some of the early games. Now, we got smartphones,
which aren't very smart.
Yeah, and just look at the number of games that you can get on there.
There are more games than I humanly want to look at.
I'll just say, for a couple of years there, I was playing the Simpsons Tapped Out game.
Yes, and I was playing it for a while too, and then I tapped out.
I tapped out a couple of times, and I would go off and quit, only to come back. When at the beginning of different events like Halloween. The Halloween ones were interesting. But I kind of got tired of it. I think my wife still plays the game, but I marveled at this, and of course, as we discussed a couple months ago, There's going to be, a new Pokemon game that's going to be coming out